This is a stimulus update and daily news report, and things are really heating up as multiple deadlines are approaching. Some good news here: Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Janet Yellen have reached an agreement, and a deal has been made to pay for that $3.5 trillion stimulus package. I'll play you some video clips around that. When it comes to the White House and the government shutdown, the White House prepares for a government shutdown, telling other federal agencies to have contingency plans in place. Hope you're having a fantastic, and if you appreciate these fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below, and I'll have more details of that down in the description below. But first, Chuck Schumer announces Senate-House deal on tax framework for $3.5 trillion package. Here's a video clip of Chuck Schumer making that announcement.
The White House, the House, and the Senate have reached agreement on a framework that will pay for any final negotiated agreement. So the revenue side of this, we have an agreement on.
Along with that press conference with Chuck Schumer and Janet Yellen, Nancy Pelosi signals that she won't move $3.5 trillion bill without Senate-House deal. So, meaning that she's keeping to her word, she's not going to put one bill in front of the other. So it looks like they're still on track to go simultaneously for a Monday, September 27th vote. Here is another video clip explaining more of what's going on.
Democratic leadership said that they have a framework for the tax increases in that $3.5 trillion spending plan, but they provided no details. Now, the announcement came after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer met with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen this morning. The chairman of the tax writing committees in both chambers were there as well. And Pelosi said that the House will soon move forward with its own version of the bill.
We have consensus in overwhelmingly, maybe 10 to 1, 20 to 1 in our caucus as to these priorities, a higher percentage in the Senate. But we wanted to make sure that it was paid for.
But while Democrats said they were making progress on the social spending bill, the fate of the infrastructure bill seems uncertain despite President Biden's meeting with lawmakers yesterday. Now, Pelosi dodged the question of whether the House will still vote on it Monday, saying only the Democrats are taking it one day at a time. Also up in the air is their plan to fund the government and suspend the debt ceiling. Guys, Republicans and Democrats are still pointing fingers and calling on the other side to take responsibility. Back over to you.
So where does that leave us then? Clearly, the Treasury Secretary was there with the House Speaker because of the urgency around the debt ceiling, and I would think the government shutdown. What are they going to do about it?
Yeah, so we just don't know at this point, Sarah. They did not say specifically that the debt limit was discussed during that meeting with Treasury Secretary Yellen, but it's hard to imagine that it wouldn't come up. Pelosi is saying that they will not shut down the government, but we are just 1 week out from that deadline. The government runs out of money on September the 30th. Government agencies are being told to check their contingency plans just in case there is a government shutdown. So right now we're waiting for one side to blink and either Republicans to get on board and help Democrats pass this continuing resolution and raise the debt ceiling, or for Democrats to realize that they cannot do this if they want to increase the debt ceiling as well and put forward a clean government funding bill instead. So next week is going to be critical in seeing how this plays out.
Now, during that press conference, Nancy Pelosi was asked if the vote is going to happen September 27th, Monday coming up. She did not answer that question, but Democratic leaders toward Monday infrastructure vote, I guess, trying to do everything they can to get it done by Monday, but there has been no confirmation it will happen on Monday the 27th. So 11 senators urge House to pass $3.5 trillion package before infrastructure bills. So these senators are Bernie Sanders, part of the Progressive Caucus. Basically, they want the $3.5 trillion to come before the $1.2 trillion, that Part 1 bill. So what they're saying here is Congress must not undercut the president's proposals that will create new opportunities for America's families and workers. The House of Representatives should wait to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill until the budget reconciliation bill, which enacts the rest of President's Build Back Better agenda, is sent to the president's desk. So basically, they're demanding that they get the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill before the $1 trillion bipartisan package. So it's going to be a big showdown. It's going to be a lot of action happening over the next few days as Monday is approaching. Some quick stimulus updates before we get into other important updates. So stimulus update, heads up, parents, an extra $500 tax credit payment may be headed your way. So what it's saying here is that According to the IRS, the maximum amount a parent can receive for the credit, or actually, let me read this part right here first. The good news is that the new tax credit payment called the Credit for Other Dependents addresses the issue with one-time tax credit for children and dependents who qualify, including children over the age of 17 who still live at home. According to the IRS, the maximum amount a parent can receive for the Credit for Other Dependents tax credit is $500 per dependent. These payments will be issued as part of your 2021 tax return and can be claimed if the dependent is between the age of 17 to 18 and living with you, a person under 24 and a college student, has an individual taxpayer identification number, and is being supported by you, the taxpayer parent or guardian. So yeah, looks like ages 19 to 24 too the parents could get that $500 payment. So this could be good for parents. I know a lot of you thinking, great, more money for families and parents. What about everyone else? Yeah, so this is what we know so far. I know it doesn't apply to everybody, but I think this will help a lot of parents out there as well. When it comes to the government shutdown, so White House prepares for a potential shutdown as leaders grapple with crucial deadlines, Biden agenda. So the White House on Thursday began to advise federal agencies to prepare for the first government shutdown of the era. So we came really close last year, did not have a government shutdown. The administration's Office of Management and Budget is alerting federal agencies that barring a new appropriations bill, they are expected to execute shutdown plans next week. Basically, they're preparing for the worst, saying, hey guys, we're probably going to have a shutdown, so make sure that we have enough money to pay for Social Security, pay for all these other federal government programs, Medicare, Medicaid. Looks like there's going to be a really bumpy road ahead of us if the government is not shut down. Next up, let's talk about the debt ceiling of what's going on. The debt ceiling and the government shutdown are two separate issues, but yet still connected. Here's Janet Yellen giving a warning about the debt ceiling that's coming up.
Defaulting on the national debt should be regarded as unthinkable. Failing to increase the debt limit would have absolutely catastrophic economic consequences. It would be utterly unprecedented in American history for the United States government to default on its legal obligations. I believe it would precipitate a financial crisis. It would threaten the jobs and savings of Americans, and at a time when we're still recovering from. I would plead with Congress simply to protect the full faith and credit of the United States by acting to raise or suspend the debt limit as soon as possible.
Janet Yellen using a lot of scary words. Looks like a lot of bad things could happen. Now, we don't know the exact date. So U.S. default date is estimate Congress wants, Yellen can't give. So we don't know the exact date. It's not like, hey, your mortgage payment or your rent payment is due on the 1st, and if we don't pay it by the 1st, there's going to be consequences. We don't have that date from Janet Yellen, basically saying that it could happen mid-October, which is only a few weeks away. Next up is a video clip from Bernie Sanders bashing Mitch McConnell about the debt ceiling. You got to take a look at this one.
Mr. President, Republican leader Mitch McConnell this morning once again reiterated that the Republican Party will not vote to lift the debt ceiling, and in an extraordinarily irresponsible manner, Republicans have indicated that they will not pay the debts incurred under the Trump administration. In his statement, as he has done time and time again, Senator McConnell implies that this debt ceiling has something to do with future spending. It does not. Like anyone who owns a credit card, the payments that are made are for past spending. In this case, spending incurred under the Trump administration. And let us be clear. If the United States, the largest economy in the world, defaults on its debt, it will plunge not only our country, but the entire global economy into what could become a severe economic depression. That means massive unemployment, higher interest rates, severe reduction in government services, and possible cuts in such programs as Social Security and Medicare. The irresponsibility of the Republican leadership is not just something that I worry about. According to press reports, former Republican Secretaries of State, Secretaries of Treasury Hank Paulson, who worked under George W. Bush, and Steven Mnuchin, who worked under Donald Trump, Republican Secretaries of the Treasury, both of them visited with Senator McConnell to make the case about the need to extend the debt ceiling.
What are your thoughts on what Bernie Sanders had to say there? Also, I'm going to give you some more information about how serious this debt ceiling is. So the fight over the debt ceiling has the potential to tank the U.S. economy. Here's what it means. Here is another video clip from former Treasury Secretary Jack Lew talking how serious this really is.
Mr. Secretary, we've been in this position 78 times or so since 1960 under Democratic and Republican presidents. We have never failed to raise or suspend the debt limit to pay our bills. Are you really worried this time could be different?
Well, good to be with you, Garrett. I'm always worried when we approach a deadline and we see a political fight where the extension of the debt limit is turned into a political weapon. We saw it escalate through the 90s, but really in 2011 to 2013 is when it became a clear strategy. It's a little different this time, and I think you have to unpack what people are saying. The Republicans in the Senate are saying they're not going to vote for the debt limit, and it has to pass with Democratic votes. What they're not saying is that they're not letting a majority vote to pass it. They're saying we're going to need 60 votes to pass a debt limit, which means they're going to filibuster it. If they're not going to vote for it, then you should at least get out of the way and let Democrats vote for it.
Right. It's not just that they're voting against it. They want to make it as politically painful as possible for Democrats to raise it. It begs the question,
and that creates
though.
Peril. That creates peril because you don't know exactly when you need to raise the debt limit. It's always hard to predict. It's a function of revenue coming in and spending going out. Right now, we're at a moment where the economy is recovering from the economic crisis. Revenues are coming in at a way that is not typical. We're not even opening all the mail promptly to open the checks on quarterly payments because we don't have enough people.
Doesn't that beg the question then? I understand the bad faith politics here, but doesn't that beg the question then that Democrats should just not mess around with this? They have the ability to do this through reconciliation. Given the risk factor here, should the president just say, you know what? Republicans, you're refusing to govern. We're just going to handle this because we don't want to play around with it.
Well, let's remember, reconciliation is not the typical way that the debt limit is raised, and
but it's the way that it could be done. It could be done by Democrats alone if they decided to say the Republicans are refusing to govern, so we'll just do it.
Well, it's on its own track now, and it's not a simple matter to go back and enact a new set of budget rules that would permit that. Right now, that's going to come up for a vote. If this were on the level, Republicans would let Democrats vote for it. They would vote against it, and we wouldn't have a crisis. Let's remember what happens if you hit the moment where the debt limit doesn't leave you the room to borrow. It means you can't pay your bills. You might hear arguments saying we can pay some but not others. Well, for 232 years, the United States government has paid all its bills. And if you're defaulting on any of them, it undermines confidence. And we're not at a moment where that's a risk that should be taken. And we don't have a way to pick and choose between the different things the government spends money on. There'd be long delays in making many payments if you ever went to an irresponsible approach like that.
Well, and that's the Democrats' argument here, is that we made decisions about what the government was going to spend money on when we spent money on it. So we ought to just raise the debt ceiling now. The question I have, too, here is we are the only country in the world that does it this way. We have raised the debt ceiling almost 100 times since we came up with the concept. It's clearly not holding down debt. It is a debt sunroof at best. Why shouldn't we just get rid of it altogether?
Look, I've long been an advocate in changing the way we handle the debt limit. Going back as far as the 1980s, when I worked for Speaker O'Neill, we tried to make it an easier process so you wouldn't have these kinds of high wire acts. Since we reached the point in 2011 where the U.S. was downgraded by a rating agency, and we saw major money market funds dumping short-term treasuries not to hold anything with a maturity in the window, I think it's time to figure out a way to get beyond it. And I also want to point out, you said correctly that the debt limit reflects payments for past commitments. The reconciliation bill that's moving through Congress now is paid for. It's not the thing that's causing the debt limit to need to be raised. It's the tax cut in 2017. It's the spending it's things that were passed either on a bipartisan basis or with Republicans mostly casting the votes.
Yeah.
I think if you look at what ought to be the place where the debate is happening now, it ought to be, how do we do things like reform the way we collect taxes in this country so that we actually collect the revenue that people owe?
So what are your thoughts on the debt ceiling? A few weeks ago, we just figured that it was going to get taken care of. Now that it's become a political issue, it could affect every American in America, and not just America, but other economies around the world. Let me know your thoughts on all that. That is all the stimulus news I have for you today to hopefully cheer you up a bit. Here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
And then I want to do one more thing to you. Do the things that you want to do in a lifetime. Guys, you guys can do whatever you want, at least if you want to do it.
Thank you so much for watching. So yesterday I got to go do some kayaking with my two daughters. We did some kayaking, and it was great. Bella kept wanting to jump off into the water. Told her it wasn't a good idea. May not have been the cleanest water, but we still had a really good time. Anyways, if you want to check out any of my other videos, you could click up here for my Wise Buys video, a new one actually, and then down here for more stimulus updates, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, be safe. Thank you for watching.